I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Hello and welcome to Mythmakers. Mythmakers is the podcast for fantasy fans and fantasy creatives, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. My name is Julia Golding. I'm an author, but I also run the activities of our centre. And one of my favourite things to do on this podcast is to interview other authors, particularly those who are at an earlier stage in their career and are new voices to me, because that's a great voyage of discovery. So I'd like to introduce you to Liz. Now, is it Hyder or Hyder? Just so I get it. Ah, right. So Liz Hyder. We have a lot in common, we've discovered, because we were both born in the same part of the UK. But Liz it has a forthcoming fantastic book called The 12, which it's due out shortly, isn't it, Liz?
10th of October.
10th of October, yeah. And this is a follow-up to Bearmouth, which we'll also be talking about. So first of all, Liz, other than most important point about you being you're a fellow Essex girl, which to people in America is a bit like being a Jersey girl. We've had to struggle against that, haven't we? But on your journey to being an author, Liz, what was your sort of gateway book? What fantasy writers led you to wanting to do this stuff yourself?
I mean, all sorts really. Narnia is key. Narnia is key. And Narnia is a land that I go back to regularly. I wish I could actually in real life. It's a world I immerse myself in by rereading those books endlessly. They're probably the books I've reread the most out of everything. And I'm rereading them again at the moment. I always find when I'm exhausted or if I've gone through sort of slightly rough times or anything like that, they are my kind of comfort read, really. And it's always so interesting revisiting them. So definitely Narnia is kind of key to me. But I mean, I read whatever I could get my hands on. And ironically, I never remember the word for this, but there's a word for being like addicted to reading. Why can I never remember what the word is? I was going to look it up before I sat down, and I made myself a cup of tea instead. Foolish girl. But I'd read the back of the cereal packet. Like if there's words, my eyes are just sort of drawn to them. And so I'd max out my library card every time. We were allowed 10 books.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
10 books.
You probably still are, actually. I haven't been...
I don't think it's 10. I think it's only like 5 now, but I max out my card every time. So yeah, I read Green Noah as well, the Lucy M. Boston, which is, for those who don't know, it's a fantastic series in which basically the ghosts of the past live in this house, and a boy who comes to sort of stay can sort of not just see them, but also interact with them. And it's sort of slightly time slip as well.
Yeah.
I read a lot of that. The Borrowers, I loved as well. And then some other kind of Welsh stories as well, like Jenny Nimmo, Snow Spider. I always think it's Snow Spider trilogy, but it's not called that. The Snow Spider's the first one, and there's another 2. Anything like that, really. Lord of the Rings, I didn't come to Tolkien until I was a bit older. And I sort of regret that, really. I mean, I read The Hobbit when I was quite young, but not The Lord of the Rings. And I loved The Hobbit. I was obsessed with it. So there must have been a gap in communication somehow, where I read The Hobbit kind of obsessively when I was about, 10 or 11. And then didn't really get Lord of the Rings until I was older. Didn't know it was there. Didn't know it existed. Wrong.
That's quite an interesting blind spot, that one. But Tolkien actually didn't think he was writing for middle grade or YA when he was writing Lord of the Rings. So he would not be disappointed that you came to it as an adult. So
he's not offended.
Yeah.
The thing is, good story is a good story whenever you come across it. And, it's the same with Alan Garner. I read a lot of Alan Garner, probably more as an adult than I have when I was younger. I think Elidor was maybe I definitely read Elidor when I was younger, but again, coming to him as an adult and rereading those books, it's a whole different level of pleasure really, because you're reading them at a different stage in your life. So there's different elements of you that feed into that writing. You interpret it in a different way. And I love how that relationship with a book can change. The book is the same, but you have changed.
The thing about Alan Garner is I was absolutely delighted. Was it last year or the year before to find that he was shortlisted for the Booker Prize? Because I'd assumed, because I read him as a child, that maybe he was no longer writing, maybe no longer with us. Just in that way that you assume people have gone. And there he is still producing really interesting books he must be in his 90s now, or very late 80s. He's not a spring chicken.
I think he's in his late 80s now, but also he just keeps getting better and better. I mean, Boneland and Treacle Walker, which are his two sort of latest novels, are both extraordinary. I've never read anything like either of them. Boneland came out, I think, about six years ago or something, and and that's one that I've reread a lot of times, and I cannot quite pin it down. It's sort of like the literary equivalent of Smoke, that every time I read it, and I think I've grasped it, I swear it changes every time. Yeah. And it's not that my memory is bad, I just want to reassure everyone, because I've reread other books and that doesn't happen. But with his writing, there's something that is so minimalist that it allows you to fill in all those gaps between the words and the gaps between the lines. And I think that's why it changes so much. But it's extraordinary. It's his writing is amazing. And I'm not a minimalist writer. And so I always really wildly admire that in other people.
Well, I'm also I also am on the literary, as in using a lot of words end of the spectrum. So I agree with you. So you've gone through your Narnia portal, and as a little girl, and you're thinking, I'd like to do that. And scrolling forward a few years, not that many, but a few, you end up becoming a writer. So was Bearmouth your debut, or is there lots of novels sitting in a drawer at home that haven't quite gone anywhere?
Oh, there's loads. I mean, it's not just, if it was physically on paper, it wouldn't just be a drawer. It'd be one of those like huge, it would be like a Narnia style kind of wardrobe that you'd open, and then it would kind of topple on you with dead ideas. I've written all sorts. I've always written. I'm the youngest of three, and we're very close in age. And so it was a way of kind of keeping us entertained. It was like, why don't you go away and create a magazine? Why don't you write a story? Why don't you do the illustrations? Why don't you make up a newspaper? And so we were always writing and drawing and sort of making things up. And both my mum and my dad have got incredible memories. And so, and incredible sort of imagination as well. And so they would always be like, oh, I wonder what would be around this corner. Or like, I wonder if, like kind of, you get those bricked up doorways, like what if you could walk through that? And, what would be on the other side? Or imagine if you walked through that you could be transported somewhere else, where would you go? So it's just sort of constant. That was just sort of normal, really.
They sound excellent parents. I'd just like to put that in there.
I really lucked out. I've got to be honest. I really lucked out there. And books, it was, we were always encouraged to read. There were books that we were taking to the library a lot, as kids, and taken to museums and sort of, let loose in the forest. Quite a sort of Enid Blyton sort of idealised childhood, really. And sort of quite a kind of 1950s childhood, minus sort of, echoes of rationing. But yeah, no, so I've always written, and I went off to university and I did a drama degree, and I wrote some terrible plays that I hope anyone who's got a copy has destroyed. And I wrote short films. I got a grant to make a short film in my last year at university, and I thought that was it. I thought that was my big break. It was just like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Hooray!
Steven Spielberg, look out.
Yeah, here I come. And I sort of still slightly thinking myself as a failed filmmaker, because films take so long to make, and that development process can be incredibly long, and then you've got to get the money for it, and it's crazy expensive. The people you might want to cast might not be available, but the great thing about your imagination is you can cast who you want. They can never say no. They can be dead and you can revive them. I can have Buster Keaton in one of my books, it's like you can do what you want. You can cast who you want. your budget is endless. But yeah, I have got so many failed ideas. Bearmouth was my the seventh novel that I'd written and the first to get published. And I don't see the others as being wasted or anything else like that, because it's an apprenticeship, and I think everything that you write is useful. Everything that you write is it's not wasted. So I won't ever go back to them. You know, anything that was kind of genuinely good, or you got sort of a little spark of something that I might reuse somewhere else, it will resurface somewhere along the line. And if it doesn't, well, there's other ideas waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I think writers are very, so some of us hold on to these things thinking they're just waiting for their time. And others, like me, put them in something we call the graveyard document, where I kind of acknowledge that maybe their funeral has happened and the moment has passed. But maybe there'll be a resurrection. We don't know, but I don't expect it. But it's very encouraging, because I think a lot of people listening to this are aspiring to write, wanting to write. And it may sound a bit harsh, but a really good piece of advice is, when you've finished your first novel, sit down and write your second.
Yeah.
Keep going, because not only will you be improving book by book, mostly if you're listening to feedback and all the rest of it, you're also getting into your stride.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'm always a book ahead. So by the time the 12 comes out in October, I will have finished drafting the next one, or hopefully it'll be in a fairly decent shape. It's already plotted out. I've written a bit of it already. I've got 2 waiting in the rings, really. So they're having an argument in my head as to which one gets written first. But I like to be a book ahead, because it also takes the pressure off, so that when it does get published, that kind of, hopefully you do get a bit of noise around publication and you hope people like it, but ultimately it's not really within your control. None of that's within your control. You have to accept that you've let go of it. It's no longer your story. Your imaginary friends are now free to be other people's imaginary friends, you know. You have to share them. And I do find that letting go process absolutely horrendous and upsetting. But I've got much better at it now. But me staying a book ahead means that I've got new imaginary friends to play with. So I feel it's okay. Those ones can go.
So let's talk about the 12, so that people get an idea of the kind of thing it is. It's a quest to find a lost person and put things right. It's a sort of general thrust of the plot. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where it's set and what it's about, and who the audience is for this, what age group you had in mind primarily? Though, of course, I read it with huge enjoyment, though I may not be exactly of the age it's targeted at.
I'd say it's sort of 12 upwards. So it's young adult, but at a kind of younger end, young adult. It's set in Pembrokeshire, so a little bit of the Welsh coast, in winter, around the winter solstice, at the turn of the millennium, so 1999. And two sisters go to the coast for sort of, it's ostensibly supposed to be a treat for kind of Christmas holidays, and they go with their mum. And Kit, who's the main character, is 15, and her younger sister vanishes. And it is absolutely a quest for her, but it's a quest that incorporates, you know, stone circles and time slips and creepy bits of folklore and our relationship with the natural world and the importance of friendship and kindness and acceptance and learning to be comfortable in your own skin, I think, as well. Yeah. I'm not very good at talking about it yet, because I've only literally just seen the proof of it yesterday. And I did a proof job in some bookshops. So, you know, for those who don't know, basically you take early copies into your bookshops and you chat about it. And I realised as I went into the first bookshop, I thought, are they going to ask me what it's about? And I've been so busy sort of working on the next idea. It's not that I've forgotten or anything. You know, I don't know how to talk about it yet. What I need to do is get some more people to read it and then tell me what it's about. And then I cherry pick the best bits and then regurgitate them and pretend that I thought of it.
I think one thing you can do is ask a question, which is, what if you were on a holiday in a really beautiful but ancient place with your annoying but beloved sister? She disappears and nobody else remembers her. What would you do?
Oh, yeah. Ask yourself a question of it. That's a great idea.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Free pitch for you. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And I would say I read it. I just adored it. I read it with attention, but also it was very quick to read, if you know what I mean. I've sort of raced through it, but also taking in all the details. It's wonderful. And you don't need to know the place in Wales where it's set to enjoy it, because it's evoked so powerfully. And also, it's not just the place as it is now, it's the place as it has been over the millennia. So you get a sense of how nature has changed at different periods of history. In fact, the humans in the landscape are a very minor part of the history of that place. And that's all very well described and sort of established. I was reading through the blurb. Publishers send around these pitches with books when they are going out to critics, and they compare it to contemporary writers from the UK. One calls Marcus Sedgwick, and the other is David Almond. They may not be very well known to our listeners over in the US, but both of them write books which are powered by myths and legends, but some of their work is. And in the case of David Almond, has a strong sense of a region in his work. But for me, I found I was actually much more reminded of Alan Garner, who we just mentioned, and Susan Cooper, who wrote the Darkest Rising series. You're just sort of trying to unpick your relationship with South Wales and Manorbeer. Is it Manorbeer? Manorbeer.
Yeah, Manorbeer. I called it Manorbeer for ages.
Yeah.
So, the thing that's so embarrassing about this, I live in Ludlow in South Shropshire, and there's a train. It's an occasional train that goes direct from my house to Manorbeer, and I'd never clearly not paid attention to the train
announcements.
and I was getting on the train further north, actually, back home, and it said, this train will be calling at Tenby, Penathley, at Manorbeer, and I thought, Manorbeer? I thought it was Manorbeer.
Us posh people want to do the Manorbeer.
Sure, Manorbeer, and I thought, what? Well, wait. I love Wales. I think Wales is a really interesting country, and I've got kind of, a long relationship with it in terms of, we used to go on holiday there every summer when I was a kid. We'd be taken mainly to North Wales. But to me, it always felt like a place of magic, partly because, I'd read The Snow Spider and I'd read other Welsh writers when I was growing up. And Lloyd Alexander, who's an American writer who lived in Wales for a bit and wrote The Chronicles of Friday, which is inspired by elements of the Mabinogion. Those to me are so rooted in Wales. And so they're all those books that I read. And the fact that their flag's got a dragon. Come on.
Yeah.
And that feels like totally plausible. It feels like there is something about Wales that it's just full of storytelling. I think, it's a huge sweeping statement, isn't it? Like, the Welsh are really good storytellers, but I guarantee if you go into any shop in Wales and you say, I don't know about this, can you tell me about this? That, unless you're unlucky and you get someone who hasn't got much time and can't be bothered to talk to you, you will get a story. You'll get a story about it. It won't just be an explanation, it'll be a story. And I always find that really fascinating and entertaining. And where I live now is I'm very near the border of Wales, and I sort of go over quite a lot. But there's just something so powerful about such old stories, and about the fact that Welsh is such an old language and is still being spoken and written, and it's never been a dead language. It's never been approaching a dead language, despite the English's attempts to knock it out at various stages in history. It's very much a vibrant, alive language, and I think that all sort of fascinates me, really. And Pembrokeshire I only really discovered as an adult, because I didn't really know the sort of South Wales so well, and I just found it sort of fascinating. And Manorbeer, the idea for the book came because I thought Manorbeer sounded interesting, and me and my husband went for a long weekend in Tenby, just sort of around the corner from there, and we walked along the coast to Manorbeer, and the minute we turned the corner and went into Manorbeer, I just had a feeling, and it's always quite difficult to explain, but it's a bit like a tuning fork. Like if you put a tuning fork down on the ground and you hadn't knocked it and it was ringing anyway. That's the only way that I can describe it. It's like your body turns into a tuning fork where you think I have to come back. I just thought I had to come back. And there's a little church. There's sort of three kind of buildings there, all of which are sort of in the book to various degrees. there's a really old castle. There's an ancient castle that's sort of semi-ruined, but it's got a house in it. And then there's a big sort of horseshoe bay, and the castle sort of looms over the back of it. And then the other side of the valley opposite the castle is this sort of little stone church, very grey stone church with a white tower. No windows in the tower, but from right at the top, there's what look like windows, and they've got black leading around them. And where it rains a lot and they get all the sea air and everything, it's sort of streaked and smeared underneath. It genuinely looks like the tower has been crying. And they are the two main buildings. And then out on the little headland, there's an ancient cromlech that would have been a burial tomb thousands of years old. And none of them quite make sense. Like, you sort of stand there and none of them, the relationship between them doesn't seem to, I just, every time I go, I couldn't quite work out what the relationship between these three things were. It felt like there was something there, and it's like on the tip of your tongue, like kind of that sort of sense. And so I went back on my own in the depths of November to a place I found really creepy for a week, which was obviously a stupid idea because I'm a massive wuss about anything ghostly. And so my friend came down and actually rescued me. And
Held your hand.
held my hand. Well, daytime's fine. It's just nighttime. My head is filled with imaginations of creepy things. And,
Yeah.
you know, I knew I wanted to write something that was atmospheric, but that had kind of real creepiness to it.
Mm.
You know, and as a sort of fan of, you know, M.R. James and ghost stories and all that sorts of thing.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing you want to be thinking about on your own in a really tiny, kind of very quiet village that's very, very dark a lot of the time in a dark time of year.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But I think what you're describing, that idea of going somewhere and finding your, like this tuning fork image, which is a lovely image, it does seem to me to be our storytelling gene switching on, because those desires to explain, to fill in the gaps, to make sense of something which doesn't actually make sense to us yet, seems to be the very basic urge that we have as humans. And one of the chief pleasures of actually spending the time writing is to answer those questions for ourselves, pose and answer them for the readership as well. So you've set it as at the Millennium, which now seems quite a long time. Of course, it is quite a long time ago. It's like a quarter century ago, though it is yesterday. I was going to ask you why this moment. There is some patterning reasons and sort of reasons of myths and legend why you might want to choose that moment. But I thought there were some other possible reasons for doing that. Why did you choose that date?
I think solstice and sort of celebrations around solstice is always a time for reflections. People always look at like New Year resolutions, or they look at Christmas and gatherings. And so it is a time of year when people tend to reflect on what they've done this year, what they might do next year. So partly it's a time of reflection. Solstice, because that kind of turn of the sun and the light and the dark, I just think is always such an interesting thing anyway, which obviously ties into those celebrations and reflection. Yeah. But also partly because there is a theory that the sort of the great light in the sky, the sort of Star of Bethlehem, was actually a conjunction. It was actually some
okay.
Together. So this bright light in the sky that's very persistent and very unusual was a conjunction. And I think it is supposed to be. Forgive me now, because don't look it up, people, because I've forgotten. I think it was like Venus and Mars. So it's not the great conjunction that I do have a conjunction in the book. It's not the same one as mine, but that's what they think probably was the sort of Star of Bethlehem. And so if it occurs, because the great conjunction in my sort of story, it does occur every 400 years, and of course that does then add up to, you know, so doing the maths, 4, 8, 12. Yes, that is correct.
It's plausible.
Sorry, yeah. Maths not my strong point today. So partly that as well, yeah. And lots of different reasons. And then also the technology, I wanted them to feel slightly cut off.
Yeah, that's the one I was wanting to ask you about, because one of the problems about today, writing in the last 10 years, is when you want to find an answer, the obvious, people say, well, Google it, you know, that kind of thing. So we are spending a lot of our existence in a online space that isn't very interesting really as a subject for story. So to get rid of it, you make the phone run flat, or you're in a Wi-Fi black spot, or you go back in time.
Yeah.
And by choosing pre-smartphone, I was amused that one of the chapter vignettes, one of the sketches at the top of the chapter, was a phone from then, because a lot of your readers will have been, well, most of them will have only ever known a smartphone world.
Yeah.
That it was just that little bit more basic. There was the internet, but it wasn't available everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and so you can't find those easy answers to questions. That you can't ask a question and just go and look it up. If you have to make more effort to look it up. And it's not that the internet wasn't there; it's just that you could only get access to it in certain places. And I thought that also makes my characters more helpless. That they have to find out the answers to those questions themselves. And so it's empowering in a way, but it is also frustrating because they can't just click their fingers and find out the answer to a question. They have to go and seek it out. And so there's something about the quest of that is an interesting thing to play with. So it's sort of, all of those reasons are really why I set it around then. All of those things kind of came kind of together. And there is some bullying in the book, and I wanted that connection with the phone so that the bullying is still a threat. It's still a presence, even though the person doing it is many miles away. But that element of a threat, because I think that is something that is much more easier. It's much easier to do that now because you've got smartphones.
It's worse. Much worse.
It's much worse. You can do messages, and as you send it, saying, you horrible person, I hate the way you look, or swearing nasty things, whatever. Like and that message disappears as soon as the person's read it at the other end. So there's no trace. So things like that are so much more horrible and frightening and nasty. But that sort of that basic, what we would sort of think of now as sort of more basic technology, that you can still use those tools for sort of nastiness as well. So I wanted to I didn't want them to not have a phone.
Yeah. So not my own childhood, but
well, not mine either, very much not mine. So that's sort of in between stage. Yeah.
I noticed that all your characters are quite lonely. Everybody is lonely, in fact, even the ones in families, either because their parents are absent or absent through busyness. At this stage in the story, because obviously there's a movement in the story to community and love and friendship. Were you thinking of those, what I would call square peg in round hole kids at school, the ones who, there's nothing particularly, Kit actually is very gifted, but she doesn't feel as though she fits, does she?
No, and I think Kit's got her sister, Libby, who disappears, who she's on the quest to find. Libby's not lonely, but Kit, there is a loneliness about Kit because she's been increasingly sort of isolated, and there's a loneliness Story, the boy who she sort of becomes friends with, and there is a reason why he's called Story, which I won't go into. But he's definitely lonely. But the two of them, by kind of getting to know each other, are less lonely. And I think it is that thing that, I was a very geeky child, like most bookish children. And I think there is that thing of not feeling quite like you fit, really. And so I never really had like a best friend. I had friends who I was very close with. I had sort of best friends as a plural. I never had a best friend because for me, it always felt like quite a risky strategy to sort of throw all your eggs in one basket. So I was friends with everyone, but also not. And I think you become aware if you're sort of a geeky child, that you have to sort of be able to read the room, and you have to work out how to sort of slightly keep your head down in a way.
Yes, but
I'm quite interested in sort of exploring that a bit as well.
But it's also, because it's from her point of view that she is accepting other people's, what she interprets as their view of her. And one of the lovely things, the blossoming in the book, is to actually shift around and say, some people start to say, well, what I see in you is this.
Yeah.
And she did have some encouraging figures earlier in her school career, but they started to go off off-piste, or, off the rails when the bully turned up in the school. And one of her sort of growth journeys is to actually remember she's the kid who basically will be fine once she gets to university.
Yeah. She'll probably be fine at A-level, because it's
absolutely
really hard and it's really tough, but you're academic and you'll do well. But there's sort of not really enough people like her in that school at that particular time. And so there is that sort of isolation. I have to say, before everyone starts feeling sorry for me at home listening, I had a really happy childhood. I was generally fine. I did have someone who was in my brother's year, so like 2 school years above me, who for some reason hated me. He just hated me. And I don't know why. I never did anything to him. But I've got very curly hair. He'd call me the juicer, which got tired very quickly. And I've worn glasses since I was 4. So, I'd get the 4 eyes and specky 2 eyes and all that sort of stuff. He would occasionally try and pick a physical fight with me. He punched me in corridors. I don't consider that I was bullied because I totally punched it back. I'm 5'10" and I have never.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
sort of like spelt wave. So I gave as good as I got, so I don't feel like I was bullied, but I also feel like that there is an uncertainty in that you never quite knew when you might bump into him, or if you might be okay that day, or if you might not be that, or if you might not be. And that interests me. And seeing it sort of in a fictional way as well.
Yeah. So it's a very encouraging book to read and to give to a child who, if you know them and you think that's a really interesting child who doesn't quite fit and isn't quite flourishing, a perfect book to give them, I would say. There's some lovely patterns woven throughout your story. You mentioned one of the characters is called Story, who he explains is after, it's got a bigger meaning, but it's also after one of the lesser known astronauts who is called Story. But you've got birds, stones, time travel, stars, lots of these crunchy nouns. I love these nouns, like very specific birds, not just because Kit loves birds, so she knows what she's looking at, which is always great as an author. If you can think, can I plausibly say it's a chuff rather than just a plain old bird? That's really nice when your character knows. Are these patterns, which also give you lovely poetic language to describe things in, are these emergent properties as you write, i.e. you don't really plan it like that way, but they sort of arrive when they're ready? Or do you then actually start off your story almost with a word cloud where you've made a list of the kind of world that we're in and then bring it in? Because I know that some writers do that. They kind of approach it with, here is my atmosphere. Yeah. And it's going to have stones and stars and waves and beat. Or is it, tell us about your writing process.
Yeah, that's really organised. I never thought of writing that bit down. It's just all in my head. It's all in my head and in my heart, really. I walk a lot and I figure out a lot of my plot. I'm definitely a plotter. I'm not a pantser. I plot. I have to know where it ends, because otherwise I don't understand how you can the idea that you would arrive at your destination without knowing that's what your destination was. That doesn't make sense to me. I've got plenty of writer friends who are literally going to go, stretch out and then tap, 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 and off they go. And they discover the stories it goes along. Obviously, I think that's just nuts. And they think the way that I work is nuts as well. So I tend to have a grid. I tend to have a bit of a grid, and it's got my main characters on, and it's got what's sort of happening when. So it's more of a timeline, really, but it will have themes woven into that. I didn't really do that so much with the 12, actually, because it's first person, so it makes it much easier. I tend to just have sort of bits of paper, like things that I know will happen in the book. And then I'll walk and try and work it through my head what order they should be in. And then I tokenistically shuffle the bits of paper around on the floor, but I've sort of done with them, really. I just, I know the sort of shape of it. Kit, I always knew was going to be a bird nerd. I'm a bit of a bird nerd. And I was a bird nerd when I was quite young as well. So there's a sort of scene in the book where she gets taken by her teacher at the weekend to go to a bird fight, and that is real. That happened. That did happen to me, and it's funny now because you sort of think a teacher would never be allowed to do that now. Imagine all the consent forms you have to sign. But a teacher did do that, and I still do remember that day, and it was a really lovely thing to be taken out, me and another boy from the class. And so the bird nerd thing is quite easy for me to write about because ultimately I'm quite lazy, and it means I don't have to do any research.
Yeah.
And making about bird nerd is great. And but because of the wider kind of theme in the book about our relationship with nature and our relationship with the natural world, I wanted her to be a wildlife nerd of some kind, and birds is always a good one because there's, the fact that they can fly and we can't, sort of the feather motif, they're just wondrous. I love, with Kit, that was quite easy. And with Story, I knew it was going to be about stars. I knew he would be a kind of stargazer, and that he would have in his little caravan that there would be sort of those luminous stars used to get his kids on the ceiling. So there were certain patterns and things that I knew I wanted to be in it. And the same with the stone circle, I knew that I wanted the stone circle in it. So it just they kind of just turn up organically, and then they're woven in. They're just woven in through the draft, really. And the first draft is always, I have that moment where you sort of just finish writing, I think, well, that's not too bad. I think that's all right. And then within about half an hour, you think, yeah, that bit, it's not going to work, is it? You need to move that bit around there, and you need to, So I kind of enjoy the moments where I feel like I've done an okay job, knowing that 5 minutes later, I'll come up with something that's not quite right. And then I really like that for me, even though I have plotted it out, and I do normally plot my books generally pretty thoroughly, but I like to leave enough space that organic things can happen in it. Like a character can say or do something that you think, oh God, I didn't know you were going to do that. Oh, that's annoying. What are you going to do now then? I've got to fix all this here. So I quite like it when they kind of take on a life of their own, because then I know that character has become real. Really real, that I can't predict what they're going to do in the same way. And then I love the editing process because it's effectively a jigsaw puzzle, that it's like, here are the things that aren't quite working. Ta-da, and over to you. And it's like, okay, so why isn't it working? And what can I do about that? And sort of evaluating that and then working out solutions to it. The kind of puzzle solving bit of my brain loves that. I think sometimes for sort of, for writers who are listening, editing, sometimes it always seems a bit overwhelming, and it seems like it can be, a really sort of hard thing to face. But I just think actually see it as empowering, that it's only you who can do it. It's just you. Yeah. It's just you, words on a page, and you can fix it and you can make it better. And the great thing about writing is that it never has to be sort of finished unless it's taken until it's sort of prized out of your hands and taken off with the printers.
So there's a real sense of, even though it's a fantasy, it has definitely its sort of feet in realism, I think. And one of the ways that I felt that was the balance. I'm going to be careful how I talk about the ending, but there is a bittersweetness to your sort of take on the world, which you get at the end of Lord of the Rings. Frodo is damaged and has to sort of go on for healing. But you also get it in things like the Avengers, when Tony Stark sacrifices himself for everybody else. Oh, sorry, plot spoiler there, guys. And Harry Potter, of course. Harry does step out on his own at the end to sacrifice himself, but other characters are also sacrificed in that cycle of books. So did you sort of know, you said you plotted in advance, but were you aware of that? Well, I put it as a greater love of no man than he laid down his life for his friends theme. Was that something you felt had to be there in the story to make it feel earned? That's what I kind of felt when I got to the end. I wasn't sad, but I felt the bitterness of some of the things that were happening.
Yeah, and I think I wanted it to feel like a dilemma. That you don't want it to happen, but it sort of has to happen. And also, change and loss and what ifs, and they are part of life. They're part of storytelling. Yeah. I wanted to use that and to play with it, and that burden that you have to carry. You've done a great, that Kit and Story do great things, but then no one will...
Yeah, we don't want to go too far. We don't want to give away the end. Yeah. But it's not a depressing end. It's got a sort of, there's something a bit cleansing about a bittersweet ending, actually.
I think it's empowering in some ways.
Yeah, because an overly happy ending can be a bit cloying.
Yeah.
So the balance, I think, is lovely. It's very well done. I also particularly like your Watcher character. It's the sort of the villain character, particularly because what you seem to be wrestling with in him is something I wrestled with right at the beginning of my writing career, my first fantasy quartet, which was called The Companions Quartet, which in an environmental story, one of my, I don't want to call them villains even, but one of my antagonists, his view was the answer to the environment is to get rid of all these pesky humans who are messing it up. So and my main character does sympathise with that character to a degree. I was interested to see you in your book 18 years later from when I was thinking that in an earlier stage of our environmental thoughts, we're having the very similar thoughts to that. So was it important to you that your villain wasn't like the Dark Lord who's so obviously evil, but a character who has his own agenda which you can sympathise with?
Yeah, very much so. And someone who has really thought about it a lot and weighed it up and come to a different conclusion than I would. But at the same time, you can see why he would think that and where he's coming from. And that
so it feels a bit kind of somewhere like slightly mentally ill because he's isolated himself.
Yeah.
It's that element to him on a sort of mythic level. It's what happens when a powerful being cuts himself off from the social contract in a way.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's a really lovely way of looking at it, actually. I think that is something that was probably there. I have had various sort of friends and family who have quite serious mental health issues, particularly recently, actually. And so I suppose that was probably bubbling away in the back of my head without me realising it, which is why it's always so interesting to talk to other people about books, because they see things in it that you think, oh God, yeah. It's always enlightening. It's like,
oh, I was very clever doing that, wasn't I? Totally.
Yeah. But yeah, there is that. And I think I did want to make him complex and layered and also quite a sad figure in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I was getting at. When I said everybody is lonely, I felt that he was also probably the lonely.
Yeah, I think he is.
Because he separated himself from the 12, and that's not a spoiler because that is an emergent thing from the story. I haven't given you his name, so you won't know which one I'm talking about. And just finally, we should mention the wonderful artwork that comes along with this book. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can see the lovely cover here. But it also has what they call in the trade chapter vignettes, sort of pencil drawings at the beginning. No chapter numbers, I noticed.
Yeah, I don't really do sort of scenes, really. That's my failed filmmaker in me.
Oh, interesting.
I've never...
I'm looking to see if I can find the mobile phone. So if you don't... There we go. So if you're young and you don't know what a phone looked like in 2000, there's a picture for you. And
old Nokia, whatever it was. Yeah,
if you've forgotten, there it is. And the artist is called Tom de Fresten. Did you have any communication with him or how did the artwork come about?
I'm a huge fan of Tom's work. He's an extraordinary artist. He's one of my absolute favourite artists, genuinely, like living or dead. That's how much I rate him. I think he's a really exceptional artist. And he's annoyingly a really good writer as well. He's
oh no, he's double threat.
I know. He's a really nice bloke. It's triple threat. Like he's very annoying. But I know and have admired Tom's artwork and his writing for quite a while. And it was, it really was, an absolute kind of dream come true for Pushkin to sort of pair him with the book. And because I know Tom a little bit, I did message him and say, is it, because I did sort of have that thing, something so lovely happens that you do slightly wake up in the night and think, if I dreamt it,
Yeah.
Actually it happened. So I messaged him and said, is it true? Are you doing it? And he said, yes, I am. And he said, how do you sort of envisage the cover or anything? I was like, that's not my job, Tom. But also I just entirely trust him. And I was so excited to see what he came up with. And he's such a deep, deep thinker. And he's so generous in his, in sort of sharing his sort of thoughts and his ideas as he goes along. And so it has felt like such a beautiful collaboration and such an honour to be paired with someone who's got such a incredibly original brain, and he really understood the book it really sort of sang to him, I think. And that was such a beautiful thing to kind of have that working relationship. I just feel so honoured, really, because I do absolutely love his work, and it brings that little flavour of something else on the page as well. Those interior illustrations. Yeah, he's incredible. Go and look him up and look up his website and see his beautiful paintings and be in awe.
I will do. So thank you so much for telling us about The 12, which is out in October. So we always end our tour around the fantasy worlds by picking the best place for something. And I thought, in honour of a caravan holiday in Wales, that we should pick where we should go on a caravan holiday. And it's got to be like a proper caravan, not like a glamorous gypsy caravan. It has to be like a little thing you'd put on the back of a car. So imagine you're climbing in it can be a space traveling car that's towing this caravan. Where would you like to pitch up in your caravan?
Hard, isn't it? Because I would have said Narnia, but I do think I should say something that is mind-numbingly stupid as well, is that I only realised the sort of whole religious connections with Narnia when I was older than I should have been. And a friend pointed it out to me, and I think my first year at university. And I said, what do you mean? No, Aslan's not. Hang on. No.
He can be both. Because it's both.
Maybe Narnia, Aslan's, not around so much, maybe kind of, I don't know.
But Tolkien and C.S. Lewis talked about not allegory, but applicability.
Yeah.
So for somebody coming to Narnia from a faith perspective, or coming to it later and seeing that, can do that. But you can also read it without applying it in a faith way, because it's a dash good story.
It is, yeah. I think maybe sort of early on, like when it's, early Narnia, sort of Magician's Nephew, kind of.
You're going to have your little caravan watching the creation of Narnia with your hot chocolate as the stars form.
Maybe it's already been, it's already been created, and the cabbie is already king, and, because I like them and I think they'd be a really nice king and queen. So I think
you'll be their first courtier.
and then to kind of be able to sort of hang out with the talking animals and, and maybe hitch a ride on Fledge if you'd let me. I think that would be really lovely. Or if not, no, I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to go with Narnia, because I'm rereading A Horse and His Boy at the moment, and it's is that thing being interesting to revisit those worlds again and again and sort of see.
I think it might be a bit hot in a caravan down in where are they from, Calormene or wherever it is.
Yeah.
I think you're better off in the northern climb of Narnia.
Definitely would want to be in the northern bit. Yeah.
So I think you've got to bear this in mind when you're taking a caravan somewhere with you.
Yeah, I want to be careful which bit I was in. I wouldn't want to be in the sort of marshlands and I think there's sort of
too many mosquitoes.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to be on the Dawn Treader because I'd be seasick. I just know it, and that would be real Washington. So the journey being seasick. Although I would love to meet Reepicheep. I really would love to meet Reepicheep.
Well, I would quite like to join you parking up my caravan somewhere near the beach below Cair Paravel.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. That'd be
that's very similar. Basically, it's your book. It's a castle on a hill with a lovely beach. So I'll bring my caravan and park it alongside. And we can take in the sunsets.
Actually, I hadn't thought about that with Cair Paravel, but you're right. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, where sort of books have seeped so deep into your sort of very being that bits of them are kind of echoes of them come out in your own writing in ways that you don't even realise. It's that subconscious level.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Liz, for taking us through The 12. And thank you very much for bringing it to me, because I totally enjoyed this story and I will highly recommend it to everyone. And at the moment, you don't have to wait till October. You can read already Bearmouth, which is available already. So thank you very much, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Mythmakers podcast, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. Visit oxfordcenterforfantasy.org to join in the fun. Find out about our online courses, in-person stays in Oxford, plus visit our shop for great gifts. Tell a friend and subscribe wherever you find your favourite podcasts worldwide.